want, and the big question is, does it change? As women go from stage to stage, as our guest here this morning, Deborah, put it, from season to season. One of the big things that usually happens is you find a lot of women saying things like, I don't get along well with women, or if they're in an environment where there are a lot of women, they say, but where there are a lot of women in the work environment, there's always a lot of conflict. Or there are women who say, I prefer men as friends more so than women. And you would think people who have like situations, who are alike, would more want to be together or friends, or would have more to share. Why would you say that relationships, oftentimes between women, or among women, where it's a situation where there are a lot of women, why they're so volatile a lot of the times?
There's a lot of things that comes into the mix. Basically acting from a place where they're fearful or scared and not being able to take responsibility for how they feel. And then there's also hormones in the mix. Sometimes if you don't know your cycles, or when your moods are up or when your moods are down, then they're starting to act from a place where they feel like, I'm acting out this behavior and it's not acceptable. And also they've not necessarily had the role models or the right nurturing from other women. They've not known how to create boundaries. Sometimes they overstretch themselves and say yes when they want to say no, or they say no because they're in fear or worry about how it feels and growing. So then what tends to happen is a lot of cattiness starts to happen. Well, she did that to me, so I'm going to do this to her, instead of actually finding their own sense, saying, what do I want? And then moving through a difficulty with somebody to say, look, we had a problem, let's sit down and talk about it and be reasonable about it, instead of trying to be catty. But very often they've not had the right appreciation or the right role models in terms of how to nurture each other and support each other as sisters, or to move through the difficulties and have those difficult conversations and do it with love, do it with kindness, without having to be caustic about it.
How can we start with our children then? Because you talked about not necessarily having, great examples, So what do we do with the little girls to ensure, or at least to try to curb this in future? Because, I have great relationships with my female friends, and I know, they can be great relationships. I have male friends too, but, relationships differ based on gender, based on, they're just different.
Yeah.
I have a different relationship with everybody in my life, as it should be. So, what can you do as adults to kind of set an example for the little girls around us, so these caustic relationships, as you deem them, don't carry through?
I think it's a case of showing the little girls how to move past difficulties, how to have forgiveness and compassion, how to have mercy on themselves and not beat themselves up if they do something. We all do things, we all get it wrong. And how to go to somebody and apologize, or to say sorry, or to forgive yourself, but also checking ourselves as to, when I'm talking to this person, where am I coming from? Am I doing this with love? Am I doing this with kindness? Or am I reacting out of fear? If we catch ourselves, then we too have to apologize to the child and say, actually, I didn't mean to do it like that. This is what we need to talk about. This is what we need to say. I'm sorry. Or when you've done something that's not very nice, instead of the immediate reaction to the child, take your reaction, and then when your reaction is not as intense, when you're not as frustrated or angry or worried or fearful, then speak to the child. So you're not showing the child this constant repetition of acting out of this anger or this fear or this worry.
Okay, it definitely is, I don't know, something, I guess, about women in terms of a clash of ego, or
they've just not learned to appreciate each other. They've not learned to notice what the gifts is that person's bringing. They've not noticed, actually, this person is actually really sweet, or this person was actually just trying to help me, but maybe my ability to receive help is struggling, so I can't receive that from her, and I think that she's meddling, and then I react, and it's like, actually, if I check myself, I see maybe she was just trying to help and it just came across a little strange because she doesn't know how to give help. And so when we're in the proper circles, which is what I do with women, that we can give proper healthy appreciation, healthy acceptance to each other regardless of what's going on, we can start to hear each other, have the right conversations. It starts to make it a lot easier and make those relationships very much different, instead of bonding over being a victim. And that's the other thing, we go into this victim mode. They did this to me, that's not being a powerful woman. That's not being in your center. That's like going into this victim mode, like the world's at me and everybody did this to me and everybody hates me and I'm gonna hate them back, and that's futile.
So how do you get past that? Let's start there and see if we can change some minds today, or change some approaches in terms of how people respond to certain situations.
It comes back to the question that you asked at the top of the show. What do I want? Most of us are not connected to our needs or what it is that's going to support us. So if somebody does something, you say, actually, what I really need right now is to be left alone. But we don't say anything, we keep it quiet, then the person's coming at us, and then we react. Instead of checking in to say, actually, the one thing that I could do is just to check in. Well, actually, I really need a drink, or I really need to sleep, or I really need to rest, or I really need to be left alone, or I really just need some company and to have some fun. Check in with yourself. What is it that I need and what is it that I want? Because nobody else is ever going to be able to tell you. And if you don't know, then you make a prayer, you make whatever to say, give me clarity as to what I need, because I don't know.
All right, so we told you about Love, Poetry and Song, and there were some great performances. There was a performance called The Red Hibiscus by